guys, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a recent reads video. Hopefully this will not be as long as the last one. Very sorry for the hour-long video last time. I will definitely try to keep it shorter from now on. Anyways, so yeah, I have about 9 books. I think it's about 9 to talk about today. So, we're just gonna jump right in. The very first book I have here is Cinderella and the Colonel by K.M. Shia. This is the third book in the Timeless Fairy Tale series, and it is a fairy tale retelling, obviously, of Cinderella, and in this one it's very different. We follow basically these two kingdoms were apparently at war before the story starts, and one conquered the other, conquered the one that Cinderella, who is a duchess, she is a duchess in the conquered kingdom, and she's just basically trying to make ends meet and keep her servants on staff and stuff. So she basically is taken up with like farming and trying to sell things and basically be more of an entrepreneur than, say, what noble society would want her to be. And then she catches the eye of this Colonel Friedrich, he's from the country that overtook hers, and he starts taking an interest in her, and they kind of strike up this weird friendship, and things go from there. Yeah, this was really interesting. I actually buddy read this with my mom, and we both thought this was the most unique Cinderella retelling we've ever read, because basically the stepmother and the stepsisters aren't terrible to Cinderella. I mean, the stepmother's a little cold, but they're not terrible to her, and they haven't forced Cinderella to be a servant. Cinderella chooses that, and she's actually a higher up status because she's a duchess. So it's like, it's very interesting dynamic. It's not the whole torn down, beaten up girl who is the lowest of the low. It's actually someone who's the highest, but who has lowered herself to help those she cares about. And it's really interesting. I really like the dynamic between Cinderella and Friedrich as well. They've kind of had this really bantery, almost kind of enemies to lovers vibe going. I mean, their countries are kind of enemies, and the people aren't mingling necessarily very well and stuff. And yeah, that aspect too of these two countries of like one was taken over by the other, but technically there are circumstances around that of to why the one country that was taken over isn't entirely innocent in the whole thing, but neither is the country that overtook them. And there was a lot of that dynamic going on, which I thought was very interesting as well. So yeah, it was just a very interesting book. I gave it 4 stars. Very most unique retelling of Cinderella I've ever read. And yeah, so yes, I gave that one 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. I'll also add this as well. I'm not going to show a picture of it, but I did reread the Magical Beings Rehabilitation Center series by K.M. Shia with my family in May and June. I did read this series earlier this year in February, March-ish, so it's probably one of those reading wrap-ups that I talk about it. Yeah, and pretty much my thoughts with it are the same. I did lower my rating for all 3 books to 3 stars as opposed to 4 stars, mainly because the lack of a plot and lack of villain motivation in the second book especially, and the lack of the plot, especially in the very first book, did kind of, was more noticeable this time around when I read it, and was discussing it with my family. So, it's still a fun series. It's just not one of her best, in my opinion, and it really doesn't have a plot it just doesn't have a plot. And yeah, so, and I kind of like a little more meat to my stories, but it's still a fun series. I did enjoy reading it with my family and discussing it, but yeah, I did lower my rating of all 3 of those books, which is Vampires Drink Tomato Juice, Goblins Wear Suits, and the Lost Files of the MBRC. I did lower all those to 3 stars. So yeah. Okay, and the next book I read is Torn Curtains by Tara Grace. This is a Regency retelling of Beauty and the Beast. This was one of the ebooks I wanted to read this year that I had on my reading goals this year list. Yes, this is an ebook you can get free when you sign up for the author's newsletter, and basically it's Beauty and the Beast, but retold in like Regency England, which was the most interesting aspect of this little story for me. I really liked the fact that it was, because most Regency books, let's be honest, I do not like them. I find them boring. Yeah, because nothing really happens except these partyings and these gossiping people, and I can't abide that. So, I don't generally like Regency books, but this one was fun because it had the magic element added in. So it was like Regency England, but with a magical twist. So I really, really enjoyed that part. It was pretty much my favorite part of it. I was just fine with the characters and the rest of it. It was a nice story. It wasn't badly written. It was very, you know, decently paced, especially for like a Regency story. So, and the characters were okay. The relationship was okay. So I gave it 3 stars. It was an enjoyable read, but yeah, definitely my favorite part was the whole Regency mixing with magic part. Okay. And the next book I read, I really enjoyed, and that is The Prince's Dangerous Wish by Brittany Fitzgerald. This is the second book in the Neverland Fairy Tales novella series, even though this technically, I mean, it's around 200 pages, so it's, yes, it is a novella, but it's a little longer than a novella. I would call this more a short novel. I mean, that's what a novella is. A shorter novel, but longer than a novella book. Make of that what you will. This is a retelling of The Pink, which is a Grimm's Brother fairy tale that I actually have read before, and I reread it after I finished this book, because it's in the fairy tale collection book that I have. But yeah, in this one we first follow Queen Nadine. She kind of feels at a place in the royal court. She's very shy, she's very reserved, she doesn't really like living the royal lifestyle, and then one day this fairy comes along and she's like, I will bless your next child, or your child that you're going to be having. And she does, and when she has her son Rolf, she realizes that Rolf has been given a fairy gift. Unfortunately, his gift is extremely dangerous. Whatever he wishes for, he gets. So, like, if he wishes for his mother to be with him now, she has no choice but to be there now. So, she kind of secludes them when he's old enough, kind of lying that he has frail health and stuff, because she's trying to help him control his wish-giving ability. Unfortunately, it's discovered by the palace cook on Rolf's 6th birthday, and he basically kidnaps the child. He fakes what looks like his mother's death to the boy, which is terrible. You don't do that to kids. But he does that, and he kidnaps Rolf and basically tells him that the world is full of evil fairies that killed his mother. And Rolf, of course, is 6. So, you know, and this supposedly saved him, so he believes it. So then he's very heartbroken and stuff. So the cook convinces him to wish for a friend. So Rolf accidentally kidnaps Bethan, who is like a peasant girl around his age, and yeah, and then the book jumps ahead, like, I think it's 11 years later, and the aspects of all this stuff happening in the beginning come to a full head. I don't really want to say too much more, because obviously the majority of this book is told with the 11 years later, but the most interesting aspect of this book is, aside from Nadine's perspective in the very beginning and some at the very end, pretty much predominantly this whole book is told from only Rolf's perspective, which is really interesting. Like, Bethan doesn't have a perspective at all. I thought that was very interesting, because most fairy tale retellings have either both the guy and the girl's point of views, or they just have the girls. So it was very interesting that this book was pretty much told just from Rolf's perspective, aside from, like I said, Nadine's in the very beginning and a few bits at the end. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I love Brittany Fitzgerald's work so far. I mean, I've loved all of them. Yeah, if I don't like one of the book by this author, and can get the words out, I'm gonna be surprised, because I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed seeing Rolf just taking responsibility for things that, yeah, he didn't necessarily have a choice in certain matters, and he didn't know, but once he does know what is going on and what he himself has done and what he can fix, he definitely just goes out of his way to be like, I have to fix this, I have to help, and, you know, protect the girl I've grown to love, but also free myself from this too, and just be the responsible person I need to be. And seeing his growth was really, really good, really eye-opening, and yeah, I just adored it. Nadine also has a bit of an arc too. It's more subtle compared to Rolf's, but yeah, there was definitely that in there, and I really, really enjoyed this book. Really loved it. I really love Rolf's character. He very much starts out very, very innocent, but definitely even in the later books when he's still more innocent than he should be as a, I forget, he's like 16, 11 years later, but yeah, and then he grows up even more, and you can definitely just see how he matures, and I just love this. I love the way this author writes her characters. Bethan was amazing as well. Even though we didn't get her point of view, I had a very firm grasp on how kind she is and her compassion, but also her fiery spirit, and just the way she pushes Rolf to be better, and to just be who he needs to be and to find out the truth of what is going on and stuff like that. So yeah, really enjoyed that. Really enjoy all these authors, all the books by this author, at least so far that I've read. She has a lot, but I'm very much happy that she has a lot of books because I've really loved them so far. So yes, I would highly recommend this. I gave it 5 stars, and the cover is beautiful. I just really love the cover. Okay, let's see. The next book I read, I have to find the picture, is actually it's a surprise sequel to Sorcery of Thorns, which I read earlier this year? Last year? I forget when I read it. I think it was earlier this year. I think it was last year. Never mind. Anyways, this is a sequel to Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. That is Mysteries of Thorn Manor. This is like it's a little novella that follows the characters Elizabeth, Nathaniel, and Silas as they're kind of preparing for the Winter's Eve ball, but then suddenly Thorn Manor, Nathaniel's magical house, basically locks them inside. And they have to figure out why is the house suddenly acting up, why is it locking them inside, and things ensue from there. I enjoyed this. It's just a fun, light story that follows these characters as they're trying to figure out how to get out of this house and these crazy magical shenanigans that happen. My favorite happened to involve magical clothing that kind of attacked them. That was funny. I really liked that, and just the characters interacting with each other, because Nathaniel is a hoot, literally. He comes up with the most brilliant, sarcastic, funny lines. I really enjoy these characters. I only gave this book 3 stars though, because I gave, for context sake, I did give Sorcery of Thorns 4 stars, but this one didn't feel as magical or engaging to me. I mean, it's just a short little novella, so it's no surprise. But I didn't love it as much as the first book. There was also because it's very vaguely mentioned. It's like one line in the very first book, and pretty much just one line in the second book, in this book too, that Nathaniel is bisexual. So, and then there was kind of a mention of a former, like, interest in another guy he had in the past. That was kind of thrown in there at the end. I thought it was kind of odd to put that in there at the end, and I wasn't a fan of it. That's kind of partially why it knocked me down a bit, just because it felt weird and out of place to throw that in there. It's like, we didn't need that reminder. Nathaniel fully loves Elizabeth, so we don't really need that. But whatever, it was in there, and I wasn't fond of the ending, which makes no sense because I liked the book up until then, but I wasn't fond of the way the ending worked. I'm not even fully sure why, but yeah, I just, the very last chapter, the very end of the very last chapter before the epilogue, I was just, I don't know. There was just something about it that I didn't like, and I don't really know what it is. So, all that to say, I did enjoy it enough to give it 3 stars, but for like rereading sake, no, I would probably just reread Sorcery of Thorns, because I did really like that book. So, okay, the next book I read was Abandoned by Angela Dorsey. This is middle grade, like a horse contemporary book, and I just knocked my glasses with the book, but whatever. And this one we're following Lauren. She is just doing her normal stuff, going to school and whatever, until she finds out that this car is stalking her. Not the car, the person in the car, but they're in a car. whatever. You know that there's no car stalking a human, okay? Anyways, she is being stalked. And she doesn't know why. She has no idea who this person is, obviously. And then her dad hears about it and he's obviously freaked out. I mean, who wouldn't be? So he sends her to her aunts. Yeah, her aunt and uncles for the summer. And she receives a horse there, learns to ride. She's been just riding with her cousins and doing things and wondering what's going on with the stalker thing. And yeah, and then suddenly something happens, something is revealed about her mother who had died, I forget how many years prior, but anyway, she had died a number of years prior, and some new revelation about that comes up. So she takes her horse Trooper and she runs off just to be alone, and she finds this weird abandoned farm, and things happen from there. The very first, I would almost say, almost the first half of the book, because I'm trying to figure out, it's about this much of the book, the very first part right here. That is, it's pretty slow. I'm pretty sure this was at least from the way this is written compared to her other books, I'm pretty sure this was one, if not her very first book she wrote. This is also her only standalone. And yeah, it was, that part of the book was very slow, very meandering. It was just pretty much day-to-day stuff with Lauren, and aside from like the few appearances by the stalker in the very beginning, it's pretty chill. It's just her learning to ride her horse and just getting involved in the farm and stuff. But after I think it was chapter 11, after that point, it gets very interesting when she runs off and she finds this abandoned farm. And prior to this book, pretty much all of Angela Dorsey's books have had a supernatural angle to them. Like, they either have guardian angels, or being able to telepathically talk to horses, or ghost stories, or whatever. This is actually time travel. That was surprising to me. I did not know this would involve time travel. And it's a very interesting element of time travel because it's just one section in life, and she's not saving humans, she's saving animals. And that was a very unique twist. I was not expecting, like I said previously to reading this author's other books, I was expecting more of a supernatural angle, which technically time travel is kind of supernatural, but not in the way of like angels and, ghosts and stuff like that. But yeah, this is actually a time travel book. So that was very unique. I was not expecting that. I also didn't get as fully involved with Lauren herself as a character, mainly because Angela Dorsey writes really good characters. And Lauren wasn't a bad character. She just didn't have as much depth as some of her other characters, which is what leads me to believe this might have been her very first book that she wrote. But yeah, I still definitely enjoyed this. The ending, like I said in my Goodreads review, this ending of this book, it didn't fall flat. It ended well. And it wasn't rushed, but I still felt off about it. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I felt very, very off about this ending, and I'm still not fully sure why. Because like I said, it wasn't flat and it wasn't rushed. So what was it? But I don't have an answer to that. So, yeah. I gave this book 4 stars. I still really enjoyed this. And, yeah, I would recommend it if you like time travel, like middle grade type books and stuff. Just know that a good chunk of the first part of the book is kind of slow. So you'll just have to kind of push through it a little bit to get to the whole time travel aspect. Okay. Let's see. Alright, the next book I read is actually a manga, and is the first volume of, let's see if I can get this right, Rurouni Kenshin, I believe is how you say it. Yeah, sorry about the glare. It's a problem when it's a white cover. This is the first volume of this manga that I read. It's basically historical. It is set during the Japanese historical era of the Meiji era, I believe. If I'm saying any of this correctly, I will be shocked. And we're following Kenshin here. I'm just gonna call him Kenshin. He is just like a traveling, like, he's not really a sword for hire because his sword really isn't really a sword. But anyways, he's kind of just this traveling guy. He used to be part of this revolution that happened, and he was like an assassin for them, I believe, but now he travels around with this katana that's basically reverse. I think it's like the blade is on the curved side pointing towards him as opposed to an opponent. So it's like a blade. It's like a metalless blade. It's like a wooden blade. It's a sword for defending, not killing. So, yeah, and he meets this girl who's trying to run her sword fighting training center, but it's not really going very well. A lot of her students left, and she's struggling, and it's basically their starting of their friendship, their relationships, and with other people, and yeah, I don't really know much more to say about it. The historical aspect has me thrown for a loop a little bit. I kind of knew it would, because I'm not great with historical anyways, and I know nothing about Japanese history, so that part kind of threw me for a bit. But I found myself really liking the characters. Kenshin reminds me a lot of, if you've read Yono of the Dawn, he reminds me of Zeno from Yono of the Dawn, and I was not expecting that. I was expecting him to be more of a kind of a serious guy most of the time, and he does have moments where he's extremely serious, and you can tell, okay, he's seen things, and things have happened to him that have him a little more reserved. But he's also an incredible goof. I mean, like, the guy throws out these goofy lines at times, and it's just like, I was not expecting this from you, but I kind of like it. And I like the other characters that are introduced. This volume is, I'm assuming actually the whole series is going to be this way. It is more violent than normal. Like, Yono of the Dawn I would rate as like PG-13 for like the violence and stuff. This one I would rate to PG-13 to potentially R. Some of the violence is a little more graphic. Like, there's a few, like there's one panel where they show like some chopped fingers off, some guy's head gets cut off and there's blood. It is rated teen plus for manga, which is, I would assume, like a PG-13 to a R rating if it was a movie. But yeah, definitely this one, because I'm mainly started reading this because I was curious about it, because the Shadow Creed saga by Noelle Nichols, the author was inspired to do some of her things in that story by this series. She was talking more about the anime, but I didn't have access to the anime. The library had the manga. They also have the live action movie. I'm not sure I'd watch that now. I'm seeing the violence in here, but I was pretty much curious about that movie. That's why I picked up the manga first. But yeah, I am definitely going to continue this manga. I gave the volume 4 stars. I don't know if I already said that, but I gave it 4 stars. I'm very interested in it. The way it ended, I'm very much like, what's gonna happen? And lately, manga and I have just not been going well. Aside from the rare exception, most of the ones I've been trying this year, I have DNF'd already. So, yeah, hopefully this one will continue to be good, and I will continue to like it, and yeah, we shall see. Okay. The next two I have to talk about are part of the same series, so I'm going to just kind of talk about them together. And that is the first 2 books of the Supervillain Rescue Project series by H.L. Burke. The first book is Power On. And the second book, if I can find the cover and adjust it correctly, is Power Play. This is a 4-book superhero series. This is the young adult series in part of this author's superhero universe that she has built around it, and I apparently seem to be reading these out of publication date order, because the first series is the Supervillain Rehabilitation Project. I own the first book. Have I read it? No. I've read already of this universe the first 2 books in the Supervillain Romance Project series, which I talked about in my last recent reads video. I read the first 2 books of that one, and I've read the first 2 books of the YA series, which were technically published before those. And yeah, there's a slight chronological difference in here, because I do know the guardian parent characters in the young adult books are the main characters in the Supervillain Rehabilitation Project, but, so I'm getting minor spoilers for things of like, you know, like people ending up together and stuff like that, but I don't really mind because I already knew that anyways, so. Anyways, the Supervillain Rescue Project series, basically we follow 3 teens. Mainly we follow Jake. He used to be part of the supervillain gang, but he and his brother get caught on a mission, and since he is under 18, Jake is given a second chance to go to this camp in the middle of the Oregon woods, out in the middle of nowhere, to kind of rehabilitate himself and get his life on track and potentially get a new life. He is very resistant to it at first, but he gradually warms up to his guardians, Prism and Fade, and then his friends that he meets, which there's a girl named, I believe her name is Layla. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, and I'm pretty sure between books 1 and 2 the spelling changed slightly. I haven't actually gone back and confirmed that. But anyways, I think Layla is how you say her name. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I am. And the other, who she is her power is like electricity. She can like shoot electricity out and like mess with technology and stuff. She's basically there because she got into trouble at her school stealing a ferret that can go invisible. And so she gets sent there, and then there's also this other boy, Marco, who basically has just produced fire powers. And yeah, so they're basically teaching him there so that he doesn't get into trouble from the law and stuff like that. So, and I forgot to mention with Jake's powers is he can basically break down his body into like little particles, like sand, and it's really interesting. And he can just like do things like he can, you know, particleize himself and like go through walls or whatever, things like that, or, you know, slip past people because he's dust and you can't catch him. And it's very interesting. I do like the superpowers she has created in this story. So anyways, these 3 teens are now just living in this camp, and they're learning to be heroes as opposed to villains. And the second book, we continue that story with pretty much Jake, and then we get more of Layla's perspective in the second book because she's having issues with her overbearing, politically motivated mother. But then they get this new kid into the program, and they don't know what her superpower is because she was basically just like rescued from the situation. So yeah, the kids are just going to play this like Dungeons and Dragons type board game. They're starting to play that when they find out this girl's abilities is to suck people basically into her own fantasy created mind. So basically in playing the game, she takes the game and she puts it like in her mind, like the aspects of it, like that it's a medieval village and stuff, and she accidentally sucks the 3 kids in to her head. With her consciousness, and you know, she's still there, but she's like in this trance state, and they don't know how to get out because apparently she's done this before. So then the guardians are on the outside trying to get the kids back out, and the kids are on the inside, and they have to play along in this now medieval fantasy game in order to hopefully get out. So yeah, I really enjoyed these. They're just a fun series. The young adult series of this universe was the one I was the most excited for, and I was not disappointed by the first 2 books. I really enjoy Jake's character specifically. He has just a lot of things he's going through, and I just feel for him so much, just in his trauma and just things that he has learned to do to protect himself and to just live and survive and stuff, and I really enjoy seeing his progression. Obviously, I haven't gotten to the end of the series, so I don't know fully his end story, but yeah, I really enjoyed seeing him so far, and just something that happens at the very end of book 1 just technically brutalized me. I really just feel so much for him and just want the best of the world for him. I really like the other 2 characters too. All 3 kids are very different from each other, which for some bizarre reason I didn't think they would be, which is kind of odd for me to think that way, but I kind of thought they'd all be like the troubled teen variety, and they kind of are, but they're all very different. Like Marco's extremely happy most of the time, and Leela, I still don't really know how to say her name. She's very much, she kind of has airs about her, but she's also just really kind of compassionate too. So I really like the dynamics between the 3 kids. I also like their dynamics with Prism and Fade, who are basically their guardians, and their superpowers and just everything that involves that. I'm really enjoying this series, really enjoying this whole superhero universe, and yeah, I'm very excited to eventually continue on with these books, even if I do continue them out of order. Yeah, I gave book 1, Power On, I gave 5 stars, and book 2, Power Play, I gave 4 stars. I also really liked Power Play too, with the whole, it's like kind of like Portal Fantasy mashed with superhero stuff, which I thought was really cool. very similar to if you've seen the Marvel movie, kind of like Doctor Strange, where like that one is very much more fantasy based than superhero based. It's very much has that feel to it, but more of a portal fantasy variety where they get actually sucked into a different world, which is just in this girl's head, but still it's a different world. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that part. Okay, and the last book I have to talk about is, it's a DNF. I probably shouldn't have ended with this one, but oh well. And that is Rumpelstiltskin by K.M. Shea. This is the fourth book? Yes, this is the fourth book in the Timeless Fairy Tale series. My mom and I were buddy reading this. It's just a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. I'm not really going to go much into it. Basically, Gemma, the seamstress, she is, after the drunken rages of her father's insisting that she could spin straw into gold, this crazy king from this kingdom, King Torgan, basically locks her up and tells her to do that. She gets kind of helped by this mage named Still. He's basically just in the area and he's just like, okay, you're in trouble, so I'll help you. I'll spin the straw into gold for you. Unfortunately, things just keep getting worse by then. Apparently, according to the back, King Torgan wants to marry Gemma, in order to keep her, and then she and Still run off in order to avoid him, and so on and so forth. I didn't get that far into the book. I only got about 47%. It was boring. So boring. Nothing much was happening. Pretty much it was the same thing over and over again. In fact, it might have almost gotten to the point where they were going to run off because he wants to marry her, but the thing is, I did skim ahead because I was getting so bored. I skimmed ahead. It doesn't really get that much more exciting even by the end. Mainly, I think my main issue is I don't mind slow stories. Like one of the books I'm reading right now is more of a slow story, but the thing is I didn't really care much about the characters. I liked Still. I thought Still was a very good character. He had a very kind of flamboyant air about him. He had he had personality and character that I could get behind. Problem is our main character Gemma is a block of wood. Like, I get she's guarded from the way her parents treat her and stuff, like, I understand that, but she's so guarded, she has no personality whatsoever. Like, Still's mentioning things that he's attracted to her by, and it's like, I don't really see that. And then she's, a friend with this noble lady Linnea, and she also says, like, Gemma's her best friend, but it's like, I didn't get that vibe when I saw them together. It's just very weird. It's like, to me, it felt very much like characters were saying something about this character that wasn't really there. And I don't know, it just really kind of, I just didn't see it. I didn't get it. And therefore I was bored because I was not invested in this character whatsoever. About the only character I kind of liked was Still. And even then, he only had like 2 points of view so far and 47%. And yeah. I just didn't really care, so I was buddy reading this with my mom. We both decided to just DNF it because it was like we were just kind of bored. So yeah, and this book was also putting me in a reading slump. So after, of course, I read Power Play and Power On right after each other, which I have found if I read 2 books in a row in like 2 days, that also puts me in a reading slump. So try not to do that from now on, and this book was not helping. So I DNF'd it. I feel really bad about doing that, but it is what it is. I've also determined, because Timeless Fairy Tale series was a series I wanted to read this year. It was one of my specific new books to read this year. As of now, I am DNFing this series. I am not going to continue after Rumpelstiltskin. I just have a feeling I'm going to rate these books pretty low. The only 2 books I liked of the 4 books so far were The Wild Swans and Cinderella. Even then, even though I gave them 4 stars, like, I would probably reread those. But they're not my favorites, and I just don't think the rest of the series is going to keep going that way. Like, I like fairy tale retellings, but I like a little more meat to them, and these are just simple little stories. Sometimes they're so simple, I just get bored. So I would not say these are bad books, except for the first one, but that is my opinion on Beauty and the Beast as a whole. So I would recommend people still check these books out, especially if you're interested in any of the fairy tales she's retelling, but for me, I'm not going to be continuing this series, so yeah. And that's that. Those are all the books I have read recently. Yeah, I've been talking for a while, so I think I'm losing my voice. I should probably stop now. And as always, I should mention this at the beginning of my video, but I never remember. I will have links to all my reviews of all these books down in the description, so if you want to hear more thoughts, see content things I pointed out, or additional thoughts I may have forgotten to mention in this video, you can check those out down below. I really enjoyed most of the books I read this time around, and sadly the few I didn't were either just fine or I quit reading them. So yeah, that's all for now. As always, feel free to comment down below if you have something to say. I always love hearing from you guys and responding to your comments. Yeah. And thank you so much for watching this video. Thankfully, it is much shorter than last time. I will definitely try not to get that long-winded again. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a great day, you guys. Bye!